With a 20-year reputation for clean business, Matt Glynn at Code Property Group is the first choice for real estate on the Sunshine Coast and surrounding areas. I've known Matt for a very long time from a personal level and professional level, and he is an excellent real estate agent. He's professional, he holds a high level of integrity, he presents incredibly well, and has a huge amount of knowledge when it comes to the real estate industry. So if you are in the market to buy, sell, or simply get a valuation and find out more about your current property, then give Matt a call on 0404 315 066 or matt.glynn, GLYNN at codepg.com. You won't be disappointed. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paul's Body Engineering Podcast. Running solo this week, and I'm actually doing this podcast without any preparation. And the main reason is I've got a topic that I want to talk about. And normally I do a little bit of research. I might have some facts to support what I'm trying to say. But this one is more about experience in terms of client experience, in terms of conversations with clients, communication with clients. I've even had a conversation with my wife about the same topic because she works in a similar space. And that is when clients want to throw in the towel. And this might be a bit of a touchy subject. It might be a subject that people might find a little bit, I wouldn't say offensive, but just a little bit, sensitive, simply because they may have experienced it. They may have said these very words. They may have reached out to their coach. They may have reached out to me. If you're listening to this, you might be an old client of mine or a current client of mine, and have reached out and said, "Look, it's just too hard at the moment. I want to give you my notice, or I want to quit, or I want to wrap up coaching, or anything like that." And more often than not, these decisions come off the back of emotion. They're an emotionally charged decision because things are not going well. Life is challenging at the best of times, right? I can certainly test for that at the moment. But, often these decisions are made off circumstances that are occurring in your own personal world, and you have a massive sense of overwhelmingness. You have a massive sense of anxiety. You have a massive sense of stress. And the first thing to go is your health. And it's a wild concept. And, when you sit back and break it all down and unpack it, you actually think, hang on a second, why should you sacrifice your health because you've got all this stress? If anything, research and science has proven that stress can be managed through regular exercise, good nutrition, stress management, sleep, etc. But we tend to make these emotionally charged decisions, and more often than not, the decision is made off the back of finance, right? Let's be honest, health and fitness can be expensive. It can be seen as a cost that is not necessarily needed, particularly when you hire a coach. Coaches range from, anywhere from, let's say $50 a week all the way up to $150 a week, even more, depending on what type of coach you're getting. And then we go into the world of business coaching, and that's even more. But the point I'm trying to make is we often pull the trigger on cancelling such service simply off the back of an emotional decision. And when we're emotionally charged, and this is off the back of, ironically, poor decision-making around food, poor decision-making around stress, poor decision-making around alcohol, lack of sleep or inconsistent sleep. Yet they're the things we're trying to improve. Yet they're the things that are not improving, and therefore we're going to punt the thing that's going to potentially help us get there and support us to get there. It's a completely vicious cycle, and it just goes round and round in circles. And I tell you, I've had this conversation more often than not over, the 10 years plus I've been doing this, but more recently, the last couple of years, because obviously, look, there is a squeeze on cost of living, 100%. But when you're under tremendous stress, when you're under tremendous pressure, when you're having difficult days, when things just aren't going your way, and we always put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, and when that doesn't come to fruition, well, it mustn't be working. I have to look at another means. But I always ask the question when someone comes to me with this exact conundrum. and they ask, they propose it to me. Look, it's not working out. I'm not getting results, or I'm just not following the plan. I'm letting you down. I'm letting me down. I'm wasting my money. I go back to them and say, okay, well, what then? What are you going to do now? And then I look back at over their data, however long they've been working with me, whether it's been as short as 6 weeks or as long as 12 months. And I look back at it and go, look, you've actually made progress. And this is the problem we often face, is that we suffer, and I'm talking a large population of us suffer from recency bias. Now, what is that? It is effectively looking back on information in the very near past. Now, what that means is we're looking at data from a week ago, from 2 weeks ago, and nothing beyond that. We're not looking at what we've achieved over the last 6 months because we've forgotten about it. We're living in the now, and we're looking at the now. We're not looking at 6 months worth of data and go, oh shit, I've actually lost some weight. I've actually moved some centimeters. Look at my visuals. They make a huge amount of difference. I'm actually getting up with more energy. But because we're looking at a week ago and we don't see a movement on the scales or a movement on your measurements, or you reflect back on the poor week you've just had in terms of diet, or, the extra beers you had on the weekend. Well, it mustn't be working because, I haven't got a result this week. Well, no, you've got to look at the entire bigger picture. And this is where the emotionally charged decisions come from. They generally come off the back of a poor experience or a bad experience or circumstances beyond your control. That week-long work trip over to Perth, or, the long weekend down in Melbourne. Oh, it's not working. No, I'm going to have to pull the pin. No, it's not. It doesn't work like that. You've got to look at consistency from a broader perspective. You've got to look at achieving goals from a broader perspective. You've got to eliminate this issue of perfectionism. You're not going to be 100%. In fact, I don't think I've got a single client who is 100%. Even my bodybuilders are not perfect, and they have to be near perfect in order to achieve the results that they get. But they're not going to be perfect. Some of them are going to struggle with sleep. Some of them are not going to get to the gym as often as they want. Some of them are not going to put out the numbers that they need to. Some of them are going to have to endure lots and lots of stress while they maintain their normal life while still trying to get on stage. These things are unavoidable. No one is perfect. And that's the thing we need to remove from our psyche, and we need to accept more so, because we talk about consistency, and I know it's very much a buzzword. I know it's very cliched, and you're probably sick of hearing it. But consistency can mean so many different things. It's a very broad terminology. It enables us to be consistent at 6 out of 10. It enables us to be consistent at 7 out of 10. It enables us to be consistent at 9 out of 10. These things are very achievable depending on your lifestyle. And that's the key. It's your lifestyle. It's your race. It's your life. It's your journey. It's no one else's. You don't want to try and emulate somebody else. Just because they've got a result doesn't mean you have to do the same thing they do. So the desire or the need or the emotional response to go, oh, it's not working, I'm better off just quitting it or cancelling, because straight away I can save some money. Well, there's your first mistake, because you're making a decision based on money. But secondly, quitting something that is actually helping you or helping you improve your health is probably not the smartest decision. And it's worthwhile, like whenever there's an emotional moment in your life, whether it's due to stress or circumstance or an argument or conflict, or you're feeling crappy because you've eaten half of aisle 5 or whatever the case may be, you need to sit in it, you need to own it, and you need to allow the emotion to pass. Like, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in business was never make a decision or never respond to, an email or correspondence when you're emotionally charged. Take the emotion out of it, because you're always going to put things in there that you can potentially regret or don't want to say. So you sit on it for a while. There's no need to make a decision straight away. Another day, another 24 hours, 48 hours is not going to make the world of difference. So it's really smart to firstly talk it over, maybe with close people, make that decision, just come to a conclusion, have them give you their perspective from an unbiased view, a non-impartial view, and then maybe make that decision, and then have a discussion with your coach, or have a talk with people who are in a similar situation. If you're trying to quit a gym membership, or if you're trying to quit certain classes or something like that, which has come up in discussion, allow yourself the opportunity to marinate in it. Allow yourself the opportunity to just sit for a moment and go, is this the best decision? If I pull the pin on this, what then? What does my life look like? And more often than not, and this is coming from personal experience, working with clients who have actually returned back to me after quitting the first time because they've made that decision and they've gone backwards. And that's not to say my system or they've gone backwards because they didn't have me. It's because they've gone backwards because they didn't have accountability. They've gone backwards because they didn't learn everything they needed to learn. They didn't learn everything about themselves. They thought they could do it on their own, or they thought there was something better out there, or they just believed that they could manage things on their own. Simple as that. So it became quite challenging. And the accountability, like, people don't realize how important that accountability is. When you're accountable to somebody else that you're paying, we always hold a higher value to something that carries a financial weight to it. It is amazing how that comes to fruition. It's often, think about it I'm sure plenty of people out there have downloaded something from Instagram or Facebook or the internet for free, right? You've gone, oh, that sounds good, I'm going to download that. And there's no hesitation. But how often have you actually read it? And then how often have you actually implemented whatever it was that you had? Whether it's a recipe book or a guidebook or something about money or a weight loss guide or whatever it is. You download it, you look at it, you might skim over it. But more often than not, because it's free, you don't hold too much value to it. Yet if you've paid for it, if you've invested your hard-earned dollars, you are more than likely to actually see it out or read it through or implement some element of it. So this is no different. You want to make sure that you're making the decision in the best interest of you. But again, ask yourself the question, what now? What does this look like? And I always, from a visual, and obviously people can't see me recording this, but the visual is, I've got my two hands up. It's like the red pill and the blue pill from Matrix, right? The red pill is you keep doing what you're doing. You have success. You continue to learn. You learn about yourself. You learn about your failings. You learn about the things you're doing wrong. You learn to get better. Or you take the what was it? That was the blue pill. You take the red pill, and you go about it on your own. Have you learnt enough? Can you sustain a healthy outcome? Can you manage your stress? Can you manage your sleep? Or can you look at doing it, in a different manner? Is that possible? Or was the reason you came to me in the first place because you needed help with that? So it's a really interesting thing. The only way to get better in life is to learn. The only way to get better in life is to educate yourself, is to fail. People are fearful of failing. People are fearful of getting out of their comfort zone. But you become a lot stronger. You become a lot more mentally resilient, and you also learn. Imagine 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now. Where will you be? If you've given up health and fitness, where will you be? If you've maintained your health and fitness, where will you be? It's a fascinating discussion to have, but it's also a really interesting conundrum to ponder, because I know plenty of people, look, I'm not perfect as a coach, and I know that, and I've had plenty of people leave me over the last decade, for sure. They've stuck with me for so many months or weeks or whatever it's been, and then they decide to go on their own, and we've had these discussions, and they still opt to go on their own, and it's really interesting to see where they end up, and that's fine. Like, if that's your prerogative, full respect to you, no problem. If you've got to make that decision, I get it, but at the same time, often these decisions are emotionally charged because you're not getting results, or you're frustrated in your own circumstance, and you're frustrated in your own lifestyle, and you're frustrated with yourself because you're not sticking or adhering to a plan. And then you feel like you're failing yourself, and you feel like you're wasting your time. But the point is, you need to stick it out. You need to see it through. You need to keep going, because you're only going to get better. If you think you've bottomed out, well, guess what? The only way is up. You can't go any lower. You can't, dig a hole to the center of the earth. It's a case that you can only go up, and there's going to be a moment. Everyone has that moment in their life where they go, you know what, enough's enough. I've got to pull my finger out and actually make some change here. Otherwise, you're just going to keep spinning your wheels, going around in circles, and guess what? You get nowhere, and then you're frustrated that 5 years has gone by and you haven't achieved what you wanted to, and you're seeing everybody else cruise along and get results, and it's because your discipline's not good enough, your adherence isn't good enough, your consistency isn't good enough, your just your accountability is not good enough. So those sorts of things can be provided to you. And yes, you have to pay for them, but suck it up, because at the end of the day, you got to pay for everything. You got to pay for a doctor. You got to pay for a physio. You got to pay for your car to get serviced. Everything costs money. You've just got to prioritize what's important, and you've got to think long term. So with that being said, I just thought it was a good opportunity to talk about the fact that this does happen, and I'm certain. And I liaise with a lot of coaches, right? I've got a great network of coaches, and they all have similar conversations at certain points, whether we're backstage at a show, whether we're on a trip or whatever it is. And more often than not, these conversations come up, and it's really interesting, the conversation they have with clients about them wanting to quit or leave or whatever. And look, if they've, and again, I reiterate the point, if you feel you can do it on your own, or if it's purely a financial decision, you just need to make sure you sit in the moment and make that decision over time, and not make it irrationally or make it, very, very quickly, because often that can be the wrong one. And then you start, spinning your wheels because you're losing traction in what you were trying to do. So don't make a decision based on recency bias. Make a decision purely on the fact that it is the best decision for your health, for your lifestyle, for your relationship, and, tick the boxes effectively. It's like buying a house or buying a car. Make sure it fits the brief. It fits what you're looking for. And if not all those boxes are ticked, then maybe you need to second guess that decision and just give yourself an opportunity to do so. Often you need to have those conversations rather than hide behind a text message or, an email or something like that. Have those conversations face to face. Be honest. Be truthful. Maybe the approach needs to be customized more. Maybe the approach needs to be rejigged for you to have more success in it. And that's always a really important consideration, because you can't go down the generic path. That doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. It may work initially, but it doesn't work long term. So customization is king. We know this. We know that, we have to adapt to a certain lifestyle. Like someone who is a shift worker compared to someone who is a teacher, those lifestyles are going to be different. Someone who is, 25 and single compared to someone who is married and has 3 kids, again, that approach needs to be different. So it doesn't want, the square peg has to fit in the square hole. Otherwise, the system will not work. So, look, I've rambled enough. I believe this is getting my point across. So, if you're thinking about quitting, if you're thinking about giving up exercise, if you're thinking about quitting the gym, if you're thinking about quitting your coach, just sit in it for a moment. Don't make a decision based on emotion. Allow yourself to think logically, think clearly, get a second opinion, and then you'll come to the proper conclusion, I would imagine. All right, thank you once again for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Please share this and screenshot this across your stories. Tag myself at Paul's Body Engineering. If you're interested in my coaching services or my program membership, please jump on paulsbodyengineering.com or alternatively jump across to my Instagram in the bio, or simply DM me and I'll happily have a chat to you. But apart from that, as I say to every client, every single day, have a great day.